Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Saturday. It is a weekend. I hope you're having a good one, wherever you're watching or listening to this around the world. Thank you, as always, for joining me. We're going to talk about Rodrygo and Eze today. So much debate after all the sort of reports have come out that Arsenal are interested in Eze. Loads of you have been getting in touch. We spoke about it in yesterday's show, and loads of you have been getting in touch talking about why you'd prefer Rodrygo or why you'd prefer Eze. So I thought we'd have that debate on this show. So we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about a little bit on Benjamin Sesko, latest reports from Germany, not really telling too much, but I thought I'd round that up. Anyway, I'm going to talk about Christian Norgaard as well. And while I've got my reservations about that signing, which I've freely admitted, we're going to talk about maybe his strengths as well, which could help Arsenal going forward when that deal gets confirmed as well. So a few bits and pieces to get stuck into. But like I said, I wanted to start on the whole Eze versus Rodrygo debate. Now, these are my two first choice picks. Absolutely. You know, I've made that clear from the start in this summer that if Arsenal go out and sign this left winger, these two have been my picks. Now they are different players. So you know, I fully accept if one of them comes in, then they're going to offer something completely different to the other. But I still think that whoever they go down, I think would make a massive improvement to Arsenal, even though they're both being very different things to the club. I think Rodrygo, I just feel like he's absolutely ready to get out of Madrid, sort of get out from the shadow there and really, really kick on. I think he works incredibly hard. I think he can bring lots to the final third. The way he runs with the ball, can carry the ball as well. I just think it add an awful lot to the squad. I'm not saying it would be the end of Martinelli by any means. I think Martinelli still has a big part to play, but I think Rodrygo could come in and could just really add to this squad massively and make Arsenal better, which is obviously the idea when it comes to the transfer windows. I think what Eze can do, I think he makes Arsenal better. I think he's very, very different. He's not your sort of touchline type winger. He will come inside, but I also think Arsenal need that. I think the central areas where you look and he can be a real threat. He can add to the creativity. He can, you know, when Arsenal struggle against the low blocks, which they clearly do. I saw a really interesting stat the other day. I was reading, I can't remember where I was reading this. I think it might have been Sky, that in the games that Arsenal had 60% or more possession in the league last season, they only won 7 out of the 17 games that they had 60 or more percent possession. With games that they had less than that, they got on average 0.4 points per game more. So it just shows, you know, when they're playing against a deep block, when they've got all the ball and the team sitting in front of them, they really struggle to break teams down. It's not a secret. We know that. Obviously, we've seen it with our own eyes. And I think what they lack in that situation is someone who can just break a game open like that, do something special from a central area, score from distance, an amazing bit of skill, trickery to open a team up. And Eze absolutely has that. So I think he's my first choice, Eze over Rodrygo. But again, I'd happily have either. And I know some people in my comments have been saying, why don't we sign both? I mean, that's just pie in the sky type stuff. That's obviously not going to happen, but it would be nice if it did, but that's not going to happen. So I think I would favour Eze just because of what he would bring, not just for a sort of left-hand side threat, but what he would also bring with this sort of central threat as well. When you look at Eze here, this was a graphic that Sky Sports did. You look at Eze's heat map last season compared to Trossard and Martinelli and look at how they play. And obviously they're being given different tasks in how a team's set up. So if Eze comes to Arsenal, maybe Arsenal and Mikel Arteta will tell him you need to hug the touchline more, and his heat map might change a little bit. When you look at what Martinelli was doing last season, what Trossard was doing, predominantly where they were playing, it was very much out wide. You know, you can see that from the heat map. But you look at Eze's heat map, and it's far greater area across the pitch, much more central, coming inside, and that could be what Arsenal needs to finally be able to solve this low block issue that they've had. That has certainly really hampered them last season. And I think that's a really sort of interesting graphic to tell what he could maybe bring if he does come to the Arsenal team. Vet Para here's got in touch on it, and he says, I really love the Eze links because most of our struggles come against low blocks. I think someone who can potentially generate new solutions via coming more centrally or shooting from distance is really appealing. Only concern would be that he wouldn't have an overlapping fullback at Arsenal due to our left back inverting. I like Rodrygo too, but my fear is his profile was a little bit too similar to Martinelli. I think that's a really good point, and I think that's why I would favour Eze. I think that the thing about not having a left back overlapping is an interesting one, and I think it's very much worth pointing out as well. Because then, if you've got your Lewis Skelly coming, inverting into the central areas, and you kind of have Eze doing that as well. Will they get in each other's way? Will there then be a big sort of gap out wide, and the game becomes very, very narrow? So I think that's something that Arsenal would have to consider if Eze came in. But I do just like the idea of someone who can definitely come in and help Odegaard in those central areas, be a real threat. So that's the route I go down. Now I'm going to go through a lot what you guys have been sending in since the show yesterday to see what you guys have been saying. Hacken at the top there says, I don't see how Eze lifts us to the level of getting a trophy. Good player, but not a nailed-on starter in my mind. AL Jackson says, Eze would be a game changer. I don't usually get this excited. Dave from Ottawa says, with a nice little pun at the front there, I think, easiest or easiest decision they will ever have to make. Eze all day long. He's one of our own, and we can kick sand in the face of the lowly Spurs while we are at it. Come on, you Gunners. Of course, Eze was an Arsenal player, started out at the academy, was released at 13, 14. He's famously talked about that, how he was in tears at the training ground when he was released. So, could he come back here and have a real sort of fire in his belly to prove people wrong? That would be nice. Mark says, would love to see as a baller, offers us something different and goals, glides with the ball. That's what we need. But Peter says, Eze 60 million is too much. He's too old. No sell on value. Not a proper striker. I mean, they'll be getting a proper striker. It won't be a case of Eze and then no striker. So I don't think that really matters. I get your point on the age. He's going to be 27 tomorrow, I think. It's his birthday tomorrow. And so, yeah, he's there isn't much sell on value there. But is that an issue? I don't really know. I don't think everyone you sign has to have a sell on value. If you do that, you'd just purely be signing sort of young 21-year-old players. Beave says, I'd rather Eze than Rodrygo. Trevor Bowles says, yes, it would be a brilliant move for Eze, a wonderful player. Love to have him back at Arsenal. Lindsay says, Eze would be a fantastic piece of recruitment. I prefer him to Rodrygo, versatile attacker, and will enter our team with ease. Few more before we wrap this one up. Craig Wright says, really did want Rodrygo, but now we're linked with Eze. For me, he's got to be the one we go for. Ryad says, I love Eze, but I feel like his profile just doesn't suit our squad. Rodrygo all the day for me. Christoph says, a two-footed dynamic player that can play left wing, right wing, and as a 10 is something we desperately need. We always talk about having a player that can make something out of nothing. To an extent, we have that with Saka, but Eze is that player. He would be a fantastic signing. There was loads others as well. So thank you to everyone who's got in touch and had their say on this debate. Some really interesting points there on both sides. As I said, it's very split. I think it seems to be falling more on the Eze side than the Rodrygo side from the pure amount of numbers, which again is what I think. And I think that the whole Premier League proven thing, and I know we talk about it a lot, and it's not necessarily something that is that important. Loads of people come from abroad and hit the ground running and are absolute world beaters. But the Premier League proven thing is definitely a factor in if you want to try and at least guarantee success from a signing. That absolutely does help you do that. Not every time, but I think there's definitely percentage-wise more of a guarantee of it, of Eze coming in and being an absolute success maybe than Rodrygo. But again, I'd happily have either. I think they're both fantastic. I think they both bring different things to this Arsenal squad. Let's see what happens. Let's see if one of them arrives or not. Right, as I was just mentioning, it's not a case of Rodrygo or Eze and then no striker. A striker is going to arrive. Absolutely nailed on. No doubt about that in my mind, he says. Touch wood. Not too much sort of movement on it in the last few days or so. Not seen too much. The latest from Germany on Sesko and Leipzig is that Leipzig might be beginning to soften into the fact that they're not going to get the sort of money that they really are dreaming for. There was a report in Bild that the 80 to 100 million euro figure that they kind of dream about, they're beginning to feel like that's probably not going to happen. And maybe 70 million euros is a more realistic option. I think it's definitely a more realistic option. It has to be said. We'll wait and see if this is when Arsenal go and make their move. I really think, and this isn't based on information, but I just really think purely from a calendar point of view, from a pre-season point of view, we are going to see some movement with the striker very, very soon. I think everything suggests that that's going to happen. We know how determined Arsenal are to get one. We know how determined Mikel Arteta is. He is going to be banging on doors at London Colney, I'm absolutely sure, saying, where is the striker? What is going on? Get someone in for me. Pre-season is starting very, very soon. I have no doubt in my mind he's going to be doing that. So he's going to be really ramping up the pressure on, as he said on the last day of the season, the people upstairs to do their jobs and get their striker in. I think the left winger situation, whether it be Rodrygo, Eze, Anthony Gordon, whatever, I think that's got the possibility of running deep into the window. So even after the season started, maybe I wouldn't be, Arsenal have got Martinelli, they've got Trossard. I've spoken about that before. There's no immediate time sort of sensitivity for them to absolutely go out and get that one done. But the striker's completely different scenario. They have to do it. The world is watching. Sammy on the Arsenal Press Pass show, we were talking about it the other day, and he was right in what he said, and I completely agree. It's like for optics more than anything, which sounds stupid when it comes to a football club and doing deals. They have to get this done because everyone is waiting for it. Everyone is looking, and it just, the longer it drags on without them going and solving this issue and bringing in a striker, it just looks really bad on them. It really does. It looks like they can't make a decision, and it's just for the fans' sanity, as I said as well, the sort of pressure from the fans, it needs to be sorted. And I really think it will be sorted. And I wouldn't be surprised if next week, certainly the week after, we see really significant movement when it comes to bringing in the striker, whether it be Sesko, whether it be Gyökeres, whether it be a wild card that we're not quite sure on yet. But the latest from Germany on Sesko is that maybe RB Leipzig are beginning to understand that they're probably not going to get the money they want. And they do want a deal done this summer for him. They don't want it dragging on. So maybe 70 million is going to be a more realistic option for them. Got a comment here from the Kicker. He says, hey, Charles, it's looking like our window could end up being Kepa, Norgaard, Zubamendi, Mosquera, Rodrygo, and Eze, as well as Gyökeres or Sesko, all for around 250, 260 million. Then we're able to recoup somewhere around 50 to 75 with player sales, not including a big name like Martinelli or Trossard, as well as clearing out some high wages. I think that'd be an incredible window and would leave us in a great position to challenge in every competition next season with good rotation and squad options at every single position. Also, from watching some of Brentford's games last season, I noticed that Norgaard is a big threat in both boxes from set pieces. So it kind of excites me thinking about him, Gabriel and Saliba, all three attacking Rice and Saka set pieces. Would love to hear your thoughts. Love the content. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, on Norgaard, as I said, I'm not majorly convinced that this is a signing that Arsenal needed, but I'm absolutely happy to be proven wrong, and I can certainly see the merits in the signing as well. I think squad-wise, he's a fine addition for the squad. Fine addition for the squad. I think you're right, and when you look at his strengths, and that's what I'm going to focus on now, because I have talked quite negatively about this, so I want to sort of flip it a little bit and talk about some of the strengths that he's going to bring to Arsenal. And when you look at the numbers. Well, we'll talk about set pieces first because you brought that up there. I got a statistic here. I mean, this shows the threat that he is, Norgaard. So this is since the start of the 21-22 season, most expected goals from set pieces. Look, you see he's sitting there third. If you watch it on YouTube, you can see the graphic that I brought out. See, Gabriel is top of that with an XG of 14, just over 14 goals since the start of 2021-22 from set pieces. And Fabio Schär is second, Norgaard is third with over 10. So, I mean, he's a huge threat. I mean, Arsenal know full well his threat. He scored from that long throw in the opening day of the season in that horror show for Arsenal a few years back, just after COVID. And he scored plenty of goals. He had a good goal scoring season last season as well, Christian Norgaard. So he is going to be a massive threat from set pieces. There's no doubt about that. He defends them well, but he really does attack them well. He finishes well. So that's going to be good. That's going to be solid. So when you look at the way he progresses the ball as well, I think that's a really interesting thing in terms of how much he plays the ball forward, because when you look at what Arsenal are doing in midfield and how they're going to potentially change things, and I'm just going to try and pull a graphic up, sorry, while I'm doing this to sort of explain it. It's not going to be on screen, but I'm going to have the numbers in front of me. Here we go. So how Norgaard and Zubamendi could potentially change things from Jorginho and Thomas Partey when Arsenal's midfield happens next season. You can see from the numbers in 2024-25, both Norgaard and Zubamendi have got lower accuracy numbers when it comes to passing from midfield. Jorginho's successful pass rate was just under 87%. Partey's was just under 89%. You look at Zubamendi's, that's 85%. So that's quite a big drop. And Norgaard dropped down to 83%. So big drop in successful passes. But when you look at the number of forward passes, percentage-wise, that they played in 2024-25, Norgaard and Zubamendi are way ahead of Jorginho and Thomas Partey and Declan Rice when it comes to forward passes. Norgaard forward passes percentage rates 35.29, Zubamendi's 32%, then Jorginho's 26, Partey's 26. So that's a massive jump of playing the ball forward and progressing the ball quickly into the forward areas. So maybe that's the Arsenal idea when it comes to changing the midfield this season, is to try and beat this sort of low block problem, or this problem of Arsenal playing just a little bit too slowly, which we certainly saw at times. Is you're going to have midfielders who are going to take a few more risks when it comes to actually passing the ball forward and getting it forward. And obviously, when you take more risks, it's not always going to be successful, and that can explain the sort of lower completion rate when it comes to passes. But maybe that's the idea for Arsenal. Maybe that's how Arteta and the coaching staff have looked at it and thought, how can we improve? How do we get better? How do we solve the problems we found last season? Moving the ball forward from just in front of the defence to the final third, allowing teams not to set themselves that quickly. That could be a big area where Arsenal could look to improve. And maybe that's why they've looked at Norgaard, they've looked at Zubimendi, they've looked at their ability to play the ball forward quicker. And that's a way around that issue. So, yeah, it's an interesting point, going back to the question from the kicker, talking about set pieces and other stuff. There is clearly going to be some attributes that Norgaard is going to bring to this team that Arsenal have been lacking. And so there are some positives to it. So there you go. While I've been fairly on the negative side when it comes to this transfer, there are clearly some areas to it which you look at when you look at it a little bit more deeply and think he could improve Arsenal. He could improve the squad as well, especially in a sort of improvement on Jorginho, whose position he's taken in the squad, obviously. And Arteta began to lose trust in Jorginho. That was very clear by the lack of minutes. And if he trusts Norgaard more, if he gets him on the pitch more, that's going to allow him to rotate and put a little bit more rest in the legs of some of the other midfielders as well. Here's one from Rob before we wrap this up. Says, kind of interesting that Partey is with the pre-season training group. Yeah, I mean, it certainly looks interesting because it's not something you would kind of expect if he's just about to leave the club. But as I said before, a good couple of weeks ago, this was always the plan. He's still under contract at Arsenal. He's under contract for another couple of days. So if you're being paid by Arsenal, if you're still employed by them and they're offering this pre-season camp for players, then he's got every right to go to it and to get to work on his fitness. So I don't think it's anything more than that. Obviously, the optics look a bit strange, but I don't think it's anything more than that. They're going to come back from that pre-season training camp where they're in Spain at the moment. Then they're going to start at London Colney the week of the 7th. Then they go off to La Manga, where they're having sort of 5 days or so in La Manga. Then they come back before they go out to Singapore and Hong Kong for the pre-season tour. I wouldn't expect Partey to be involved in any of that because he's not going to be employed by the club anymore unless there's a big turnaround and there's a compromise reached in the next couple of days and suddenly he signs and agrees a deal. I wouldn't expect that to happen just purely because of what's going on with Norgaard. That suggests that Arsenal have now made a firm decision and it's not going to happen. But until that contract has passed, then you could never say with absolute certainty it's not. But I don't think this suggests that. I just think it's because he's still employed by the club. The offer was there for all players if they want to go and do this pre-season training to get himself in a bit better shape before the start of official pre-season, then they can come and do it. And a lot of players have taken up on that. Timber, Gabriel, great to see Gabriel by the way out there, which shows that his injury issues are certainly improving massively and he'll be ready for the start of pre-season. And I just think that's why Partey's there as well. So I don't think it's anything more than that. And that's it from me today, everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the start to your weekend wherever you are around the world. And I will speak to you again tomorrow. Take it easy, everyone. Bye-bye.